So I want to talk about habits. I think the word habit is kind of a buzzword in the Melee scene, but I think it has a lot of potential to be a really cool topic and something that I think is actually really important. I think the word habit is a buzzword in Melee and Smash in general because, like most buzzwords, it covers a very large concept in just one word that anyone can use. And it's like, it's so easy to watch someone and be like, yeah, I think you're not doing that well because you have some bad habits, or, oh, players are good because, they don't have bad habits or they're not predictable. And that makes it a really easy word to just toss around. But I really want to go into depth about why it's worth really understanding. Everyone has habits, even top players. And I would even argue that top players especially have habits. And I feel like that's a little counterintuitive to how most people view habits. Most people view habits as something that's bad inherently. They're like, oh, you have a bad habit. But why don't we talk about good habits? I feel like that's almost never discussed when we talk about the word habit. And because of that, I really wanted to do a series that highlights individual players, their decision making, and kind of use it as a thought experiment for how to come up with solutions to situations, discuss how their option set functions within the meta, stuff like that. And I think that's something people don't really talk about, how when you have a habit, that actually becomes a part of the metagame, especially at the top level when you only have, 10 to 20 people constantly fighting it out. And that's not really something that most people think about. For most players, I think these habits are ingrained very deeply. And these players might adapt to varying degrees based on how core that option is to their gameplay, how much the meta changes around those options, and stuff like that. Common example, I think, is if you go back a long time ago, when people were up being as Fox or Falco, they almost never went to ledge. They would always, go high because the ledge wasn't good, it was hard to ledge dash, whatever. And then, people started realizing, hey, nobody covers the ledge, I'm just going to go to ledge and be good on it. But then the meta didn't really catch up for a long time. There was a long period where you could just upbeat to the ledge as a spacey from above it, and nobody would ever edge hog you. Nobody would cover it because, why cover it? They think most people don't do it, and even if they go to the ledge, maybe they'll mess up their ledge dash. Who cares? So then for a while, you might develop a reasonably good habit of upbeing towards the ledge because, again, within the meta, people aren't punishing it. And I think that when discussing these habits and how much people change their habits, because, there's this idea that, a god of Melee will obviously adapt if they need to. But sometimes, if the people you play with don't call you out for this, and you do it for years and years, all it takes is one tournament set where, someone does edge hog you and you're not expecting it. And you might adapt by the end of the set, but, maybe it's too late at that point. So in this video, the player I want to highlight is actually Mango. I think Mango is a great example of a player who has a lot of habits. I would say these habits are mostly good habits, a little bit bad sometimes, but overall, I think part of his strength as a player is that he's built such strong habits. I want to focus on 3 habits for Mango in this video. We're going to talk about ledge hop double lasers. We're going to talk about an approaching mid-height aerial into a cross-up early aerial. And we are going to talk about up being high, which I will refer to as a high up B. These are habits that I think Mango has had for a very, very, very long time. Some of them get punished, some of them don't. Obviously, he mixes it up, but I would still describe them as habits because when it comes down to it, these are things he will fall back on. It's last stock, last hit, I have to bet the barn on what Mango's going to do. I believe he would do one of those things. So let's talk about double lasers. This is the one you guys probably heard the most about. Everyone memes about it. They're like, oh, lasers aren't safe, whatever. But I want to point out, there's a reason double lasers are used so much. It is an incredibly strong option, easily one of the strongest ledge options in the game. So already you have to start asking yourself, people are like, oh, bad players have bad habits of ledge hop double lasering. And the thing is, yeah, that's true, and that's why it gets memed on. But part of the reason so many quote-unquote bad players use this option is because of how strong it is. It's easy, it's effective, but it is very punishable. And I think there's this misconception that, I know he's going to double laser, I'll just kill him every time. But that can be very risky. So, there's a lot of ways Falco can mix it up. You might run up and crouch and get ready to beat the double laser, but he ledge hops really high and you're like, wait, is he going to aerial or laser? And then suddenly it's the wrong spacing. Or maybe you're going to jump on a platform and try to come down on top of him and punish it. But what if he does a really high ledge hop laser that barely clips you? Or you shield drop aerial and you do a really early aerial to try to catch him. But then he gets his shield up and then punishes you out of shield. So the point is that These options are not always easy to punish just because you see them coming. Now, of course, you can punish it. I'm not saying you can't punish it, but you often have to hard read it in a way that leaves you really vulnerable. Mewtwo King is one of the classic examples of this. He'll run up to the ledge, put his shield up, Mango will ledge hop double laser, Mewtwo King will up B in between the lasers. But like, think about how risky that is. You're just running all the way to the ledge and putting your shield up. Like, what if Falco wavelengths past you? What if he ledge dashes? God forbid if Falco actually ledge dashed. There's so many ways that can turn into a bad situation for you. So I want to point out that one of the reasons that ledge hop lasers are so strong is that it is actually risky to punish them, which is very, very, very important. So we keep talking about how Mango or anyone might do these double lasers, and we talked about the risk reward. Risky, not risky, how to punish it. But when does Mango even tend to do them? And this is how we identify it as a habit. Because anyone could just say, oh, I use ledge hop double lasers sometimes. That doesn't make it a habit inherently. What makes it a habit is it predictable? Is it consistent? So in Mango's case, ironically enough, I think he does it when they're the riskiest and when the opponent is very close to the ledge. That might sound kind of backwards to you, but in reality, when the opponent is close to the edge, sure, you can do the whole, oh, that I know it's risky, whatever, but really it's more so that they're just respecting the other options. If you are right next to the ledge because Falco barely slid off and you're not ready to do anything, what are you going to do? You're going to dash back to avoid the ledge hop rising downer that's coming. So what's the problem with that? It makes you very vulnerable to ledge hop lasers. And I believe that if you really watch Mango carefully, you watch through his many tournament sets, I've been watching Mango for however long. A big thing that happens is that he tends to double laser in that specific situation where the opponent is very close to it and is actually vulnerable to Falco ledge hop side B, Falco ledge dashing, wave landing on a platform, etc. So that said, now when you watch Mango, you can really try to pay attention for that. And going back to this whole idea of, does that make it a bad habit, a good habit? What does this even mean for thinking about the game or fighting Mango? Well, I won't say that Mango wouldn't adapt and stop double lasering if he was getting really punished for it. He really does mix it up. But like I said, what it comes down to is, what if it's the first time Mango's fighting that person? Very first stock of the match. He gets barely sent to the ledge, they're right next to it. Depending on his mood for the day, it kind of depends how he's been playing. But if I had to make a bet, I would bet on the double laser. And I think that bet, has been made by many players, and it's part of why they can perform well versus him. Of course, not to say Mango's not an amazing player. He worked on his ledge options a lot, and because of that, he's become less predictable. But that doesn't change the nature of when it's likely that he will do the option. Habit number 2. We're going to talk about this mid-height approaching aerial that Falco might do. It will cross up, and then he does an early aerial that also crosses up again back to where he came from. So this one, may be a little harder to identify. Not exactly as obvious as a ledge hop double laser. But I think it's very common and very important to understand. Even as a more casual viewer, a high-level viewer, it doesn't really matter. So why does he even do this? Well, Mango does it to catch them moving out of shield immediately after his mid-height aerial. While Falco is kind of on the slower end, so a lot of characters can maybe wave dash away or something, so he has to chase them down really fast with an early aerial. But why does it even work on people? So what'll happen is, normally people are used to an early aerial when Falco crosses up. And that's very common because it'll be a spacing where maybe if Falco does laser into a rising downer and you don't shield, it'll hit you because there's not enough time to do anything in between. So people tend to hold their shield there. And their habit, their muscle memory after years of playing so many Falcos is that when the Falco crosses up at that range, he's at frame disadvantage because he just did a really early aerial on your shield, which means you have more than enough time to wave dash away. That's kind of the standard response from a lot of characters, and it creates space, and Falco can't punish it. So what Mango does is at this range where most people are expecting an early aerial, he actually does a mid-height aerial, which gives him a little bit more frame advantage. But because people aren't expecting it or aren't reacting well, they just rely on their muscle memory and then he catches them. Let's talk about potential counterplay to this option. I've described it, I'm sure it sounds really strong, and you're probably thinking, wow, why doesn't everyone do this all the time? And what do I even do about it? So depending on your character, of course, you have a different option set. But let's say Mango, he does it a lot versus Falcon, for example. He'll do mid-height aerial cross-up, early aerial the other way. Well, if Falcon just nares out of shield, he'll be doing it even the wrong direction, right? but Falco tries to cross back over, he'll jump straight into that nair and then get comboed for free. Another one is that you could even wave dash away, even though, you know, that's the thing that Mango's trying to counter. Depending on your character's jump squat, the spacing, etc., you can sometimes wave dash away and then you get your shield out again before Falco catches you, because even though the aerial is quick, he still has to travel. So maybe his down air will be active, but he hasn't actually reached you horizontally yet. So characters that are quicker out of shield, this tends to be more effective with. Sheik is a great example. So you might be able to wave dash away and then shield or even pivot shield and then get some sort of shield grab on, because now he's doing an early aerial, which is much more unsafe. Another good option is to just hold your shield. This doesn't always result in a hit for you, but I would still say it's decent counterplay because it's fairly safe. And if he crosses you back up, you know, maybe he's putting himself in the corner, maybe he's giving you frame advantage now that it's an early aerial, and then maybe you can play the mix-up after that. You know, maybe you don't want to play the first mix-up. You shield an early aerial. Well, that's a way better mix-up than playing the mix-up after a mid-height aerial. There's a lot more things you could do. I would say they're not direct counters as much as some of the ones I've named. Holding shield is an example of kind of an indirect counter that is still pretty valuable to use, in my opinion. Some other indirect counters could be things like maybe full hopping out of shield or even wave dashing towards him. I would say if you full hop out of shield, then when he crosses back up, that aerial will usually go under you and you can play some sort of mix-up. Now, this might not be effective for every character. I would say if you're playing Peach or something, maybe I wouldn't consider that. But again, for the quicker characters like Sheik, she might be able to get her full hop out before Falco gets that cross-up aerial because she rises very quickly. And then she might be able to needle when Falco goes under and create some sort of advantage. Kind of similarly, you might be able to wave dash towards the Falco, which sounds very risky. But again, if you wave dash so close to him that it's almost like the aerial will whiff when he comes back the other way. But let's say he plays another side of the mix-up. Instead of early aerialing, he goes for a dash away or sets up another laser. Now that you've wave dashed towards him, you can pressure him a lot stronger. Which leads me to wanting to talk about what's the mix-up even. You've heard all this stuff about counterplay from the other side, why Mango does it, but what could Mango be doing? So this is all very spacing dependent, and that's kind of what makes Melee so hard. But depending on the spacing, Mango could be shining or up tilting that could catch an out of shield action that maybe otherwise would be fine versus the early aerial. Just realizing that these spacings are very ambiguous and not so obvious all the time in a fast-paced game. And, you know, sometimes you just misjudge and you get shined, and I think that's very relevant. Mango could also be using the fact that people are holding shield to empty land, laser, get an even later aerial out instead of always doing the mid-height aerial, stuff like that. I feel that when Mango gets to these spacings, he generally only really has one or two things he really goes for, but he's really good at doing them. And because most opponents aren't, you know, they don't fight Falcos like Mango every day, they're not prepared, it's totally feasible to imagine that he doesn't even need to do those things. But I feel that if he didn't do those things, that could be a lot stronger even. There's so many more mix-ups, of course, and can't really go into depth about it in this video. But in this video, I really just wanted to focus on habits, why they're good or bad, and specifically Mango's habits, why they're good or bad, and why they even work on people. Let's talk about habit number 3, the high up B. This is probably one of, if not the most classic Mango habit for years and years now. So why does he do it? Why does it even work? I would say that people being the edge guarders in this case, generally prefer to play it safe by staying on stage. If you're playing a tournament set, of course, maybe you don't want to just jump off the stage and go for the hard read on the up B, because I would say that has a lot of potential to either be messed up or get you reversaled if you make the wrong read. So of course, people settle for the worst case outcome being safer. Oh, I didn't hit my edge guard, at least I'm in center stage. While that's obviously not optimal, it's probably easy to see why that's the tournament strategy people generally rely on. Of course, that's not to say everybody does that, but I would say that's maybe a rule of thumb. In the case that you do hit Mango's up B, maybe not directly, but after he up B's high and begins to travel, it will give the spacey some sort of defensive counterplay with their DI or whatever. So imagine that the Falco up B's and goes down towards the ledge, and then you edge hawk them. Well, now they're just dead. There's nothing they can even do. Of course, sometimes if they go high and you cover it properly, they should still just die. But depending on the situation, the character, the percent, the part of the stage it happens on, sometimes that little bit of defensive counterplay actually comes into effect. So if we look at Mango on a very basic analytical level, he's usually not super great on the ledge. Mango's not the ledge dasher type. He doesn't have 14 frames of Gallant or whatever. So when you look at Mango, he has some of the best defense known to Melee, and he's not that good at the ledge. So I feel like it's just a no-brainer. If I were Mango, I would also up B high, where maybe my SDI, my awareness of their combo routes, etc., and just not being too predictable at that point can get me out of the situation far better than putting myself in a situation where all it takes is one Marth down tilt and I die. I just don't want to do that if I'm Mango. So makes sense to him and hopefully makes sense to you. When talking about defensive counterplay, what do I even mean? So let's imagine Falco's up being high near the peak. Well, at a basic level, sometimes you just have another mix-up. If they don't read it directly, you can either drift back, drift forward, fast fall. So just even the fact that you potentially give yourself another mix-up is sometimes desirable. Even if they do read you though, there's things like smash DI. Maybe they can cover you, but they don't cover you in the optimal way. So let's say a Marth tries to get you up there, but the only way he can reach is up air. But now that he's up aired you, that gives you the opportunity to DI. So of course, what do? You DI towards the top platform rather than off stage. And maybe you still don't have a jump, and if Marth converts perfectly, it works out in his favor. But let's say he's starting to combo you towards the top platform, and then you SDI his next hit, or something like that. Suddenly, he can't combo you to tipper, you go to the other side of the stage off a forward smash at 100 center hit, and you get one more chance to recover. And Marth had to do all that work just for another guess. And of course, if you're the defender here, you want to get as many opportunities as possible, both on the level of making your opponent execute repeatedly, and also on the level of just maybe having another chance. Of course, I've already mentioned some of the counters, but let's talk about the whole mix-up, both sides of it. Of course, you could jump off stage in anticipation of the high up B, and if you predict it right, Falco's just dead. There's no flames. Even if there were flames, you can do the quote-unquote Armada Shine timing to beat it with Fox, and you can just kill him. But what happens if you jump out to hit the up B and Mango just fast falls and side Bs instead? Of course, with some characters, that's not too big a deal. Maybe I'm Fox, I just double jump side B to the top platform or side platform or something. Ledge cancel, I'm back in center. But what if I'm somebody like Peach, and maybe this is part of the difference in the tier list? You think about things like, well, what if Peach reads high up B and she's slow and now she has to float back, but Falco's already on the ledge. Ledge hops onto the side platform and pressures her. The potential to get reversaled for making an incorrect read is much higher with certain characters in certain positions than the other. So that said, you can imagine how, again, you're thinking this is a tournament set, especially if you think you're better than your opponent, like why even take those risks? Another option could be reading the angle after he up B's really high. I think thus far I haven't been specific about what I mean by high up B. So there's the idea that you up B high in the air, and also the idea that once you're up B'ing there, you choose the upwards angle. And in this case, this is something that wasn't very meta for a long time because, again, maybe everyone realized, oh, everyone goes straight or to the ledge here, and they don't want to risk going high to cover, and then the guy goes low and you lose your advantage. But I would say a great example of metagame development is that when Zane was playing Mango, he was one of the first players that I felt like regularly would be willing to go for the full jump fair on Mango's high up B. I'll hardly say that Zane's the first player to do it. I think, of course, Me2King did it first. I remember I've seen Pew Pew do it. It's not that people don't do it, but it's like the regularity of which you're willing to do it. The idea that you're not just relying on your emotions or the fact that it's a tournament set. The fact that you look at that, and maybe you didn't read the fact that Mango would up B high, but then you remembered, okay, I need to play all sides of this mix-up. And that's something that, of course, as we get better at the game, people get better and better at doing. And that's why if you watch top players edgeguard today, they're so much better at edgeguarding than they were maybe 10 years ago. Hopefully you can see how habits are not inherently good or bad, and how they might even change based on what the meta is. I really wanted to make a point of that in this video, and I really hope that people leave this video with a fresh idea of what it means to build a habit, whether it be good or bad, and what it means to analyze a metagame. I'm really looking forward to recreating this video with other top players. I think it's a really cool topic. I may be planning on some other gods, I won't say who, but if there are any players you'd really like to see a similar video for, please leave a comment below. Let me know what you want this content to be about. Thanks so much for watching, and please look forward to more regularly uploaded content. If you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel and follow me on social media, Patreon, etc. Also, I want to give a shout out to Connor and Kellen, who've done an amazing job editing this and will be doing an amazing job with my future videos. So please make sure to follow them as well.